in my time with horses, I'm able to find a way to let go of the struggles and experiences that are troubling me. It doesn't change my personal situation. It hasn't in the past, and it hasn't changed anything except the way that I felt about my situation.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit, so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the wild Mustang.
Welcome back to The Touch of a Mustang. I am so glad that you are here and you are joining me to talk about horses and the ways that they can change our lives. I wanted to continue today to talk about some of the things that I have seen and even felt in my own life as I have continued to explore how horses and Mustangs in particular can change our lives for the better. The other day, I was feeling very overwhelmed. Some stuff had happened in my personal life that was pretty upsetting, and that combined with all the day-to-day going on, all my responsibilities, I was just feeling really overwhelmed. And I could feel myself not landing in a good place mentally if things continued following the pattern that they had the last couple of days. And it was a Monday, and Mondays are always super busy. It's getting back in the week. I usually have a list of things that need to be done after the weekend. And so my intention for the day was to just buckle down, get some of my work and the things that needed to be done accomplished. But as I continued with my morning, I really felt like I needed to regroup. I needed to get myself in a better place instead of just pushing through and trudging through the things that were having a negative effect on me. And I could feel them weighing me down emotionally and spiritually and mentally. And so I decided that morning, even though I had a huge list of things to do, that I was going to take my mare out into the forest. And both those things, horses and the mountains, the forest, nature, have almost an instant impact on me to help me feel relief. And this day was no exception. I still had a bit of a timeline that I needed to follow. I had to be back in time to pick up kids and take care of things that couldn't be put off, like the things from the morning could. And so I went out into the mountains, just me and my horse and my daughter's dog, and we just went away from everything. And it was just what I needed. When I got back from that ride, I could tell a physical difference in both my emotional state and my mental state, as well as my spiritual state and even my physical being, that I simply felt better. And this is something that I've experienced a lot in my time with horses. I think it was one thing that really drew me to get back involved with horses, is because I remember that feeling, and I couldn't necessarily pinpoint it, but I remember the feeling as a child and even as an adolescent of being out with my horses, whether that was me and my horse alone or with somebody else. When I was with my horses in nature, in the mountains, it just helped me. And I couldn't have told you why then. And honestly, until I've really delved into exploring why horses can do for us what they do, before that point, I couldn't have told you either. But I've continued thinking about it, and we've talked about some of the ways that I've really found that horses can have this huge, important impact in our lives. And another way that I have found that they can really change my life is they give me the opportunity to find a release from the situation I'm in my life. And when I say a release, I mean that in my time with horses, I'm able to find a way to let go of the struggles and experiences that are troubling me. It doesn't change my personal situation. It hasn't in the past, and it hasn't changed anything except the way that I felt about my situation and the events that were going on in my life. And I realized this was really a thing. I think it first came into my conscious understanding when I had 6 young children and was really struggling in my personal life and with my personal mental state and wellness. And I would realize that this was right after I got my first Mustang. And I would realize, again, unconsciously, I couldn't have told you consciously, like, oh, I go do this and this is what it does for me. But I realized unconsciously that when I would go out and spend time with my horses, I would receive peace and distance from some of the difficult emotional experiences that I was having. And I would also often gain clarity from the situation. So it's like my emotions weren't so wrapped up in this tight bundle that I could barely think about what to do, and really often just wanted to react emotionally and react based off my emotions. And I would go out with my horses and it would give me some separation, and it would allow me to change from an emotional reaction to move back into my thinking brain, you could call it, or just, it's not a different part of your brain. It's just a different state that your brain is in. So I would be very emotionally hyped up and reaching the point where it would be fight, flight, or shut down, sometimes even in that point. And then I would go out with the horses and they would allow that system to calm to where I wasn't feeling this desperate need to react in some way that, to be honest, often would not improve my situation. So I'd go out with my horses. They would allow me to have that space that I needed to be able to get out of the emotional state of mind that I was often in, and to return to this place where I could think about my situation and I could analyze possibilities and consider my responsibility, and also where I had power and control, which was primarily just with myself. You could argue I maybe had a little bit more because I did have young children, and we certainly do have a lot more control over young children. We can tell them, go here, do this, and then, physically set them somewhere if we need to. But the primary place of my control was with me in my mental state and with the resultant choices that I made. That was where I had control. And so going with the horses allowed me to step into that arena where I had the opportunity to have greater control and greater clarity in, here are the places I can make decisions. This is the change I can make within myself. And what will that look like? How will that play out? And so my time with horses gave me that release, that ability to let go of the emotions and to move back into a state where I could more critically and calmly and rationally analyze my situation and the opportunities that were in front of me, the choices that I could make, and to consider how those choices might impact and influence other people. Now, I think this is such an important state to distinguish because in our culture and in our society today, we have innumerable means of escape. And this is often easier to go to. It is something that is used so often, and even something that I often use and still use at sometimes in my life. I certainly have not mastered it, but we have so many means of escaping our emotions. And I think that there is a big difference between escape of our emotions and release from our emotions. And I think the difference is that when we escape our emotions, we can set them aside for a time. We can put those feelings and the experiences and the situations that we are in, we can take them and we can almost make them all disappear for a time. And I really believe that's why so many mechanisms of escape are so popular and so profitable in our world today. Some of those include alcohol or drug use because we can leave the bad place that we are. Almost identical to that are other escapes, such as one that I have often used, social media, where you get on your phone and you just scroll, or YouTube, where you can jump on and just binge out to whatever it is that you feel like learning about or watching or listening to at that time. And so we have a lot of escapes in this world. Another one might be consumerism, buying stuff. We aren't feeling great. And so we think, well, if I buy this thing, it will improve my life. And for a short time, all of these things can relieve us of those emotions and the hard situations that we're in. We can get a break from them. The difference I have found between escape using those mechanisms and the release that I have felt with my horses and in nature is that when I used the methods of escape, I would leave my problems, I would leave my struggles and my emotional pain and hurt for a time. And really, it could be almost instant. I could be feeling just down in the dumps and get on Facebook and start scrolling or jumping on reels and watching them, and completely my life as I knew it and as I was struggling with would just disappear for a while. But the problem is you turn that off, or you get out of that mechanism you're using for escape. You turn the TV off, the buzz wears off, whatever it might be. And when you return, your mental state is the same, often worse. I know there's definitely times I would get on Facebook and end up feeling worse about myself and my situation afterwards. So not only would those same emotions and feelings and situations come falling right back down on me, a lot of times they were exacerbated by what I used to find that escape from my situation. And I think this can happen to a lot of us, where we jump away into these things and we feel better for a time. And when we return, our life is exactly the same. And we do it again and again and again because it's a lot easier to escape than it is to release and address and face our emotions. And so I would find that I could use these escape mechanisms and I'd leave them aside, and I would come back into my same life. Sometimes, like I said, worse. But once horses came into my life, I would be able to use that time, and it would give me that same distance, that same release of pressure. A lot of times when we begin to struggle, it can feel like there's just a tremendous amount of pressure pressing in on us, and it becomes intolerable. And so we can either seek that escape and it makes it tolerable again, or go to that release. So I would feel that pressure. And just like the other day, I could feel myself often getting to a point where I knew I would not be in a good place emotionally. I would be down and depressed. That would negatively impact my mindset to where I was talking terribly to myself, thinking terrible things about myself, and it would just continue to spiral that way. And with horses, I could feel that pressure. And often, sometimes I wouldn't even identify I was feeling that pressure, but I would go out with my horses. And this was a point in my life when I first began to recognize this, where I wasn't even riding my Mustang. Sometimes I can specifically remember is I would go out with all my kids and they would play around out in our dirt, weedy lot, jumping in and out of the horse trough, while I would work with Sylvanie, my first Mustang. And I would spend that time out there. And even with the kids' noise and stuff, it still gave me space to where I could turn inwardly and I could start releasing those emotions. And by releasing them, I mean feeling the emotions and moving through them, and to be able to let go of them, to release them, not because my situation had changed, just because really I think I had room to breathe. And I say breathe and mean it very literally. I could get out of this overstimulating world that we live in and focus on simpler things like taking breath, like having some moments of quiet. And so I would be able to go out to the horse corral and breathe, have that space, both figuratively and literally, to return to myself, to kind of get back into my body outside of my mind, and to be able to start gaining clarity. I wouldn't even say problem solving, though I feel like sometimes I was able to solve problems, but a lot of times it was just gaining insights, having little moments of truth that I could then go and apply to my life. And when I say to my life, it was mainly to my mind, to my mindset, and the way that I would think about life, the way I would think about my situation. Was I a victim in this terrible situation where everything was working against me? Or was I going to choose to stand up and say, yeah, this is hard, maybe one of the hardest things I've ever done, but this is where I am, and I'm going to figure out how to face it and how to deal with it, and even how to improve it. And I will tell you that the long-term improvement in my life did not happen for almost a decade before there were some things that began to change. But being with horses, the change that would come over my mental state would be immediate. So my situation hadn't changed. And often, even I wasn't able to just perfectly now deal with the situation. But I was able to have some release, to have some space, some time to rest and regroup, and be able to then jump back into the fray that was my life at that time. And so that's another thing that I think we can distinguish between time with horses and the release that they give between escaping or escapism, where we're using things like social media or drinking or spending money or socializing with people, going to parties. Those things all gave us that break, but that time that we spent there wasn't restful. And I think our phones are a perfect example of this, where we can like zone out. I don't know if you've ever been like me, and I'll be like, I'm just going to check something on my phone. Somehow I find myself on social media, and then half an hour later, I'm thinking I meant to go to bed half an hour ago. Why am I here? And now I'm wide awake. So it's not something that put me in a restful state. I didn't get rest from it. I would say it did quite the opposite. But we use those things hoping that they'll give us the rest, the relief, and hoping that it will last. And it just doesn't. The escape from it is so short term. Whereas with horses, I could come in and feel revived and rejuvenated. And that's exactly how I felt the other day, where I could feel the pressure building. I could feel the struggle continuing. And instead of getting my to-do list done, which I think you can argue would have relieved some of that pressure, but it wasn't the relief that I needed at that time. So instead, I was able to go out with my mare and be in the forest. And I won't say that it was easy or restful. We're still a little bit new to trail riding, so it's not super calm. She tends to want to go really fast down the mountains, and I'm constantly asking her, like, please walk carefully. I don't want to tumble over your head as we go down this mountain. So it's not even that it's a calm experience, but it's challenging and it's rewarding. And there are moments where it's just so restful. I don't know if you've ever been out alone, just with your horse on the side of a mountain with no one else in sight. And all you can hear is the wind. You're suddenly acutely aware of your surroundings. I would hear branches breaking and the birds singing. It's as if you can return to your senses, all these senses that get so dulled by all the stimulation in the world around us. And I found that for me, it literally changed my life. It made it possible for me to get through situations. I have kind of put the idea out there before and done some posts before about how my horses have saved me. And when I talk about that, a lot of times we might want to place that responsibility on the horse. And so in that way, it's misworded a little bit, because the horses didn't really do anything to save me. They very much just embodied what they are, which are these beings that are content in simply being and walking around a pasture and grazing on hay and interacting with whatever is in front of them. And so they're just there. And that's really, when I say they saved me, that's what they were, is just a gentle, calming presence. Now, don't get me wrong, like, this is the time during which I trained my first Mustang, and situations weren't always calm. I've talked a lot about the anxiety that I had to overcome to work with my Mustang and how I would even reflect that into her. So it's not like all the interactions were calm. But at the same time, I almost always think there were points in my interactions with her where I felt a calm. And another thing I think horses show us so well is how quickly we can cycle through emotions. A lot of times in society today, we don't want emotions. We want them to go away, to stay hidden, or we believe that emotions are constant. We even use it in our terminology. I have depression. I am depressed, as a descriptor for who we are as people. And if we look at horses, they cycle through the emotional process so quickly. I'll give you a quick example. When we were out on the trail, I heard a branch break and my Mustang's head popped up very quickly. I actually jumped off just because I did not want to go on a wild ride through the mountains to just see what it was. And then we kind of listened for a minute. We observed was our dog was there with us. She checked it out a little bit, which is one reason why I like taking the dogs, is they are a little bit of a watchman for us. They kind of keep an eye on everything and, are running in and out of bushes, seeing what's going on in the forest. And so she checked it out. And then a few minutes later, we were all fine and we all continued on our way. We didn't have to stay in that anxious state. And in that situation, there is a real possibility that we could face literal danger to our life. I don't think it's very likely, but there are mountain lions, which are predators out there. There are bears, which certainly could harm us if the situation presented in such a way where they felt like they needed to defend themselves. But still, we were able to cycle through, and I was able to shift my body back down into like some anxiety, being on alert. Is there something that I need to look for or worry about? Down into a place where, okay, we checked it out and everything's okay. One problem we have in our world today is that we have those same life-saving instincts. We feel that same anxiety, that same fear, sadness when things go wrong. But I think for some reason we have failed to learn how to cycle in and out of that. And in my particular situation, I could feel myself when I would get to a place that was stuck. I would think the situation's never going to change. It's never going to get better. I'm so tired of being in this, of struggling with it. I'm so disappointed that my expectations didn't pan out. I'm so sad that life didn't turn out to be what I thought I had worked for, what I had definitely planned for, and more than anything else, what I had hoped for. And it wasn't that I thought life should just be a certain way. I thought I had done a lot of things to affect the end result of my life. And I certainly think that that's true. The choices and experiences I made certainly impacted my interaction with the world around me. But my expectations were off because I failed to take into account that life consists of not just you, but it also consists of other people. And so I would really struggle with just getting in this emotion. For me, a lot of times it was just extreme sadness and disappointment. Despair, I think, is a good word to describe what I would feel a lot of the time. It felt hopeless and so disappointing. And I would get in those feelings, so stuck in those feelings in my head about things that had happened and what I thought they should have been. And it would pull me down, and I would go out with the horses and they would bring me back to the present moment, which is another thing that I want to talk about another time. But that was one thing. And that present moment return would allow me to cycle through the emotions. I would be depressed and sad and down, and I would go out with my horses and I could cycle through that. I could return to the present moment where I was with these beautiful creatures that I had always dreamed of owning, literally living my dream in that way. And I could see my children laughing and being crazy and even fighting, and realize that, yeah, there were some things in my world that were not the way I wanted them to be and were very devastating to me from how I thought they would be. And yep, that was still true. But I could also step out of that and be like, even while this is happening, even while I'm experiencing this hard part of my life, look at all these beautiful, good, insanely wonderful parts of my life. And this didn't even have to be something dramatic, like looking at your children and seeing what a blessing it is to be their mother or father and have them in your life. That, I think, is a dramatic blessing. It could even be me out walking on the trail and just noticing the beautiful sunset, something every single one of us can experience, the beauty of a moment in nature, and returning to that and just being able to see that, yeah, this part of your life is devastating. It would be easy to sit on your bed all day, every day, and think about it and cry about it. That part of your life is devastating. But it gave me pause. It gave me that space, that release to say, but wait, hold on. Look at all these parts of life that are beautiful and good. And I remember I would even have to tell myself, yeah, that thing's really hard, but you're not there right now. You're somewhere else. You can enjoy the beautiful world around you. You can enjoy the good things in your life. And those struggles are still there. You will have to face them again. You will be sad about them again. And even now, I can still look back and get incredibly sad about some things that even now I wish were different. But I've learned to do a much better job of saying, yeah, those were my expectations. They didn't pan out. That didn't happen in my life the way I thought it would. But also, who knew that these good things would happen in my life? That's not something that I planned. That's not something I expected. So even as I might still feel disappointment in that, I learned that I can also, at the same time, look at everything that is good and say, you know what? I didn't expect that. I didn't plan for all these good things. I can celebrate that. I can be happy about those things. And it's so cliche to say, but one of those things is the lessons I learned. For me, a huge lesson that I learned and I'm still learning was to care for myself and to not live my life in an attempt to please other people, because I learned that it doesn't work anyway. You can bend over backwards trying to be who someone else wants you to be or what you think they want you to be. And if they are dissatisfied with things in their life, your presence in that way isn't going to change it. And, I have a background in psychology, so certainly I can sit there and tell you the pros and cons of people pleasing and codependency, but to actually know how to implement and change those characteristics that were very embedded in me for various reasons, to change those and come into a different life, I needed some of the hard experiences that I had, or I think I would still be that. So no, I would never wish to go back. I still don't love some of the things, but I can say that good things come out of the hard, difficult struggles. That is truly where we learn the lessons. And one of those greatest lessons that I have been able to see in my life and in others as I have explored what exactly it is that horses do for us. One of those coolest things I have found is that they will provide a release from the struggles of this world and from the struggles in your mind. They don't fix it. I do think you can sometimes get the answers that you need when you're out there with them. There are so many concepts I came across as I was training my mare that was like, oh, I need to do this also in my personal life to be able to change or fix or alter this aspect of my personal life. I need to do this with myself, just like I'm asking my horse to like, turn around, look at this thing that you're terrified of. I needed to do that for myself. And so in that way, that release that horses gave to me allowed me to find those lessons, to get the space and the rest from the really difficult struggles. And as I told you, it's even something that I used just earlier this week to get a little bit of space from something that I was struggling with, from a place where I could tell like this isn't leading in a good direction. I need to take a step back and stop just trudging forward. I need to actively pause and get some of that rest and have some of that space so that I can jump back into the fray when I need to. So I would love to hear from you if you have horses in your life and if you've had struggles in your life, which I don't think. I know that we all have struggles and challenges that we face and difficult emotions that come into our life. Tell me in your comments about those. How has that been for you? Have you found that as you go and spend time with your horses, that they've been able to lessen that burden in some almost mysterious way? Have your horses helped you to get that rest and relief that you need from life to be able to go back in and to live it in this world that we're faced with and tasked to live in today? I'd love to hear what you guys think. And please, if there's someone else that you think would benefit from these discussions about horses and how they can help us and heal us, please share this with them. If you want to keep getting updates to know when I get around to getting stuff out, I haven't been the best at a schedule recently, well, go ahead and subscribe and you'll find out exactly when there's new content out. I'd love for you to join me in talking about horses and how they heal and exploring this beautiful addition in life that Mustangs give to us. And please, I'd love to hear your comments, what you thought about this episode, what resonated with you, and what your experience with horses and your interactions with them. What has your experience been? How have they impacted your life? Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to talking to you all again soon.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.